Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Bruno Mbamala. I am the Director of Digital Marketing here at Crane Worldwide Logistics. Today our discussion is on the future of customs brokerage here in the United States. And we found it important to have a very special guest today, who is the Vice President of Customs Brokerage at Crane Worldwide, Mr. Ben Burt. Ben?
Hello, my name is Ben Burt. As Bruno mentioned, I am the Vice President of Customs for Crane Worldwide, based here in Houston, Texas. I've been with Crane fairly new. I come from another customs broker where I spent 2 years as the Senior Director of Customs for Air and Sea. I had a counterpart on the northern border and southern border, and I was kind of the sandwich in between that for everything that came in. So prior to that, I had spent 9 years at a freight forwarder. I was the Regional Vice President for North Texas, so a little more freight focused. And then prior to that, 10 years at a different freight forwarder where I was full-time customs brokerage. So a good mix of both freight forwarding and customs brokerage in my background, and now I'm primarily focused on customs.
The right man for the discussions we're going to have today. All right, Ben, let's get into it. To get started, what are the biggest forces driving changes within customs brokerage today?
Well, the biggest forces that we've seen in a very long time that are driving customs brokerage is the Liberation Day tariffs. So I don't know if biggest forces really quantifies the impact it's had on the trade community. Maybe epic forces is a better way to put it.
Right.
But our whole industry is turned upside down since these tariffs have taken place. Historically, the customs broker within the freight forwarding scope was kind of in the back room on their typewriter, just hammering out entries all day and kind of left alone. And now we've kind of taken a front row seat within the industry. So we're kind of the rock stars right now, which is not a feeling that we're used to, but we're getting used to it.
Right.
And we look forward to getting back someday into our closet and just hammering out our entries again. But for now, we'll enjoy the attention and the limelight that we're getting.
Awesome. And I think we're seeing it. Recent market data suggests there's a strong growth within customs brokerage between now and 2033. So from your perspective, what do you think is fueling this momentum?
I think a lot of what's driving our industry growth as customs brokers, again, going back to the Liberation Day, which you'll probably hear me mention a lot in this interview, is the amount of work that it's created. Where historically an item may only be one tariff number, now it could be 3 or 5 or 7 or even more tariff numbers. And when you combine that over entries that are sometimes, thousands of lines long, it just creates this great impact on the industry and a great need for additional customs brokers. So as we see implementation of these tariffs and understanding them and the knowledge that's had to come with that, and then as we go into the future, that's only going to expand as we see the Supreme Court rulings and what the impact's going to have there and the new complexities that come from that. So we expect to see a lot of growth really over the next 2 to 5 years and then beyond that as well when it comes to customs entries.
Okay, we talked a little bit about, market suggesting strong growth between now and 2033. You talked a little bit about what's fueling this momentum. From your perspective, how do we translate this into opportunities for Crane Worldwide Logistics?
Sure. So we're really seeing a big push from our clients today. You could call it a demand or just a desire to get more information, but they're really expecting from us a lot of expertise and a lot of guidance and direction on how to shape their trade program. So, compliance is always a big driver within customs and understanding the regulatory atmosphere. But now it's really translating to the bottom line with the tariff impact. So where importers used to pay a 2% or a 5% duty on certain items, that same item today could be 50% or 100% or even up to 200% of the commercial value of that shipment. So when you've budgeted for a 2 or 5% duty and now you're paying 200% duty, this can really put some companies out of business if they don't plan for it and prepare for it. So they're really leaning on us as customs brokers to help provide and be a part of that conversation about strategy and how they source their goods and when and where to import and what types of duty deferment and duty elimination programs we can help put in place for them. So a lot of opportunity there that exists within the challenges we're facing.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like you guys spend a lot of time learning and understanding all the rules and regulations that are constantly changing to make sure that we provide that level of expertise to clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of what's really exciting about our industry and our jobs is it is a lifelong learning. People who have a curious nature tend to do very well as customs brokers. And, we'll kind of talk, I think, a little more about this as the interview goes. But one of the things that really excites me about this industry, I've been doing this for 20, 25 years. I've learned as much in 2025. You take any year, even my first year,
Right.
I've learned as much this year as I have ever learned in any given year. And I can't think of too many industries where you have the opportunity to constantly develop yourself and constantly push your knowledge base
Right.
to help drive your company's business and to help drive your client's business as well. So to me, that's one of the really exciting things about what we do.
Awesome. Well, you talked a little bit about the macroeconomic impact of tariffs or Liberation Day. And recently we're seeing a shift away from manufacturing in China into Southeastern Asia and other Asia Pacific countries. From your perspective, what impact would these have on U.S. customs?
So it kind of goes back to my earlier comment. The people are looking to us for kind of guidance and instruction. If it's no longer economically feasible to come from China, where should I be importing from? And that's where we really have the insight to help our clients. We see a big push. I would say Vietnam has been the big winner of these tariffs so far. A lot of people going there, a lot of people going to other Southeast Asian countries. So uh, the impact for us is really staying on top of these tariffs because, historically you get 6 months, the Congress would say, we're going to implement this free trade program, or we're thinking about, making this new duty program. You get anywhere from 90 days, 6 months or more to kind of plan a lot for that. And now in our current environment, if President Trump posts a tweet today, he could say, today's Wednesday and by Friday, this new tariff is going to be in place. So it's really critical in today's environment to be very much on top of what's going on, paying attention to not just the regulatory and trade publications, but even the social media publications where a lot of this information is coming out first. So I think when we look at what's the impact for APAC and for the Asia market, it's really understanding where people are going,
Right.
and how we can provide that insight to our clients.
Fair enough. Now, along those lines, obviously, not just the U.S., I think we're seeing across the globe a lot of trade protectionism and shift in regulations. How do you balance opportunity and risk in global customs brokerage operations?
So with these trade protectionism, there's a real fear. Well, if we bring everything back onshore, what happens to the import community? What happens to customs brokers? So the big push for us now is understanding we are seeing a lot more nearshoring, and that's was really going on prior to Liberation Day, where people, for many reasons, were wanting to bring their manufacturing cycle closer to the U.S. So we've seen a lot with Canada and with Mexico. So it's again understanding where these patterns are, where the trends are, and then how do we kind of understand that and get into the ability to package that for our customers.
As we talk about the future of customs brokerage, many shippers still view brokerage as a transactional function. Things like filing paperwork, clearing goods. And you mentioned being behind, the keyboards. How's Crane using technology to move from a transactional model to a more strategic approach?
Yeah, that's a great question because there's been talk, well, technology is coming and AI is coming, and blockchain was a big part of the conversation for a long time, and that's kind of died off.
Yeah.
But we're at a place right now where it's not that it's coming, it's here. So it's going to continue to improve, but I don't think there's anybody within any of our customers or other forwarders or brokers in our industry who have not already adopted some form of AI, right? So that the technology is here, it's growing, and it's really helping us get to a point where instead of performing more of a clerical function of keying out entries, we're able to take a more consultancy approach to where we're being able to be advocates for our clients, to where we're understanding their business better, and to where we're able to provide better guidance on what they do with their import process. So we're really transforming from a clerical function to a advisory and consulting function that helps us kind of meet that goal of being partners with our clients. So it's pretty exciting because nobody likes to sit there and just type on a keyboard all day, and to have the opportunity to study more, to research more, and to learn more, and then share that knowledge. Uh, I think we have automation to thank for that, and it's only going to improve.
Awesome. Yeah, I think you see there's a lot more synergy when um, companies embed themselves into other supply chains so that you see that mutual benefit rather than providing service. So I agree with you. I think consulting is the right path forward. um, with that said, with increasing regulatory complexity, clients are demanding more transparency and predictive insights. How can data analytics and integrated platforms deliver that kind of visibility?
Yeah, and that comes back to the benefits that automation is bringing and that some of these systems changes are bringing. It's giving us the ability to crunch a significant amount of data and then package it in a way that's understandable and actually drives decisions. So, historically, where you'd have somebody, just to make it like in layman's terms, you'd get a spreadsheet and then you got to chop that spreadsheet up. And, people have different levels of capabilities within those spreadsheets to write formulas and macros and run scripts. But at the end of the day, it's somebody going through and spending most of their time crunching the data and then part of their time analyzing the data.
Right.
And now we have the ability through technology to do all of that crunching for us. You almost as simple as like ChatGPT, where you just say, I want to see this information, and then you have it. And now you're able to spend your time really trying to understand the data and what different directions you can go with it.
And how do you see this translated into assistance to our clients in making, say, tough decisions?
It gives us the ability to not just look at our clients' data in a vacuum, but to compare that data to what's going on nationally with similar imports in their industry. So you may have an example. We had a customer who was importing wool sweaters from China, and we were able to go to that customer and say, hey, you've imported these wool sweaters, and but we're seeing only like 5% of this specific product coming from China, but like 70% is coming from Canada. And then we find, well, from Canada, we've got some quota limits where it comes in duty free for a certain amount of time each year. And so people are maybe paying a little more for the wool, but when they factor in the savings on those duty programs, it's actually significantly cheaper. And that client's like, oh, maybe I need to check, sourcing from other countries. There's always been that kind of natural assumption that everything's cheaper out of China. And that's just not the world we live in today. People really need to be out looking at other markets.
Yeah.
And this data allows us to give them that insight to help drive those decisions.
Awesome. Yeah. Nothing better than, providing a transformation for our client supply chains.
Exactly.
Awesome. Now, as we look past 2026 and look further ahead, what skills and competencies, will characterize the future generation of customs brokers?
I think the ability to manage very complex supply chains and entry processes and understand them, and the desire to always be learning and to push your understanding are probably going to, and then speed, right? So it's like in customs, you need to be fast and you need to be accurate. If you're slow and accurate, it's not going to work. And if you're fast but messy, it's not going to work. So the ability to have speed and accuracy and that very complex environment is I think the skill set that's going to take brokers into the future.
Awesome. Yeah. And if you married that with the right technology, then, there's no limit.
That's exactly right.
Awesome. All right. What do you see as the biggest challenge customs brokers will face in the next decade, and how can the industry collectively address them?
I would say the biggest challenge as we go into the next decade is also our biggest opportunity, and that's staying relevant. So one thing our clients have really done a good job is increasing their level of sophistication. So if I look back to our typical customer maybe 15 years ago, they had very little knowledge and baseline about transportation and specifically customs brokerage. They've seen the need there and the importance of those roles. And so a lot of our clients have hired people who have been in customs brokerage. They've hired freight forwarders. So their overall knowledge base has increased. They also have access to a lot of the same systems and technologies that we have. So for us to adapt and grow, we need to stay relevant. And we do that through being the best at understanding the data, always focusing on regulations and compliance and understanding what's coming down the pipe, so that again, we're taking that advisory role with our clients, we're taking that partnership role. And as we get away as an industry from some of those clerical functions that automation is able to do, we need to keep ourselves relevant, and we do that through protecting our customers.
Excellent. All right, a little bit of a fun one here. If you had to describe customs brokerage landscape in 2026 in one sentence, what would it look like?
In one sentence, be ready for speed and complexity.
Excellent. Awesome. All right. If we look ahead again, what excites you the most about the future of global trade and the evolving role of customs broker?
It is absolutely the challenge that we're facing, right? So I've always said it takes a certain kind of crazy to enjoy this work. It's high stress, it's fast paced, but for those who have that little crazy, when you start doing this, you can never leave, and you'll hear that from a lot of people who've been doing this a long time. I've tried to leave. I opened a sandwich shop. I did this or that, but I got pulled back in. I just missed it too much. I went to work for a client and it just felt boring over there. They just didn't have the intensity. So, I think that desire to just always be pushing yourself is what we focus on, and the lifelong learning. If you have a curious nature, you will never get bored in this business. There's always new regulations. There's always, as we start to import from other countries that maybe we haven't seen before, what are the specific requirements to this country? And, as the complexity and the compliance and the regulations will never stop changing. And so that's where the opportunity and the excitement comes from.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like a very challenging yet potentially rewarding future for customs brokerage as we look ahead.
If you're the right kind of crazy.
Awesome. Well, that's all the time we have today. Ben, thank you so much. I look forward to having more conversations on customs brokerage.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Join us next time.